Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm Christy Lynch. I'm the nonfiction editor at BookPage, where we connect readers with their next great book. Welcome to our author interview series here on Facebook Live. I'm here today with Elizabeth Miki Brina, who is the author of Speak Okinawa, published by Knopf. Elizabeth is the recipient of a Rona Jaffe Breadloaf Scholarship and a New York State Summer Writers Institute Scholarship. She currently lives and teaches in New Orleans, which is where she's joining us from today. This is a memoir about both the love and harm of growing up in a multicultural home with a father who is white, a veteran who was stationed in Okinawa during the Vietnam War, and a mother who is from Okinawa but left when she married Elizabeth's father to live in the United States. If you have picked up a copy of our March issue of BookPage, you may recognize it from the cover. We are so pleased that Elizabeth is able to join us today and to share more about her beautiful book. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, we're so glad you're here. This book is your personal history. It is a memoir, of course, but it is also your parents' history and the history of the island of Okinawa, which is now part of Japan. What did your research process look like for those other strands of this book? Did you interview your parents as you were writing?
Yes, many phone conversations and talks over dinner. Um, I I found the most successful way to get stories out of them, though, was just not asking them anything, and just talking and observing. There were a lot of stories that I remember that they told me from when I was younger, just recurring stories that when I asked them about it directly, they changed. Like for whatever reason, they tweak certain details here and there. They tried to make it not seem as bad or look less painful than when they came out just naturally. So I decided that it's better if I just listen, if I just talk and listen and hear what they have to say.
Yeah, sneaky
Mhm.
but effective.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Um, One of the most affecting aspects of your book is the fact that those chapters that recount the history of Okinawa and its people are narrated in the first person plural. It's a really effective choice since so much of your journey throughout the book is the struggle to reconcile yourself to your mother and to her heritage and her culture as your heritage after being estranged from it for most of your life. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that decision to write those chapters in that way.
Yeah. Um, well, as I was researching, like I read several different memoirs, and they were all it was how I could actually witness it and see it happen and feel very close to it. And so there's all these different stories that I compiled together to make one narrative of the history of Okinawa.
Mm.
My mother, she couldn't tell me. She either there was a language barrier aspect, but there was also she she said she didn't remember. And I think a lot of the times it's like we are taught memory. We are taught how to remember and how to share our memories. So I had to get it from her, but also from other sources. And so this really felt like a togetherness, like a we, right? Because but also it was very important to claim this history as my own, because like you said, I felt so estranged from it for so long. I was completely unaware of it, and the toll that not knowing took on me. So that was part of the whole point, is that if you if we don't know our histories, we don't know ourselves, we can't explain ourselves to ourselves and to each other. So that was really important to me too, that this, even though I wasn't there, it still happened to me, right? These stories are still inside me, and had you know, was responsible for like the trajectory I went on in my life, right?
Mhm.
So that was the we helped me feel close to it, and that it was mine too, right?
Yeah, you talk about these memories being impossible to forget, regardless of whether you actually lived them, because of the ways that they stay in our bodies as um, everything from addiction to sickness. You, as you put it, as poor posture or a tendency toward apology, a deepened capacity for sadness or anger.
Mhm.
Um, that those are, as you said, even though you did not live this history, it's in you. It's part of that we.
Yeah, yeah. And that was something that was so enlightening when I learned the history. It explained so much. It's like, oh, that's why my mother is so sad. that's why she that's why she's so lonely, and the isolation and the coping, but also just having to. She was born 3 years after the Battle of Okinawa, but she grew up with all that grief and that trauma, and then not to mention the how she witnessed the militarization, the effect that had on her, like seeing her island just taken over by the U.S. military, and I'm so removed from that. I'm in another part of the world, yet I'm absorbing all that sadness that she's emanating,
Mhm.
and not knowing the history all my life, I just blamed her, right? Like, you're so sad. Why why don't you just be happy? And thinking that she had some sort of agency in that. And so that was very important. Learning the history is that it's not her fault. It's yeah. Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm,
Um, Language is another important thread throughout the book, as you kind of already touched on, because your mom's native language is Japanese, but you and your father spoke English exclusively at home growing up. In fact, you say in the book that one of the cruelest injustices that you think your mother has suffered is the fact that she can't communicate with her daughter in her native language. How has your relationship to English and to Japanese changed over the course of your life?
yeah. That was that was another thing too. Like I didn't realize how huge that was, that we didn't speak the same native language, right? I thought this was just a matter of fact. And then once I had realized that, then I could try to communicate with her, not through just words, or to perceive these different ways that we communicate with each other as a real communication.
Mm,
um, my dad is, not only is he a native speaker of English, but he is like a very eloquent, great storyteller, like a master of the language.
mm,
And I had always, and I admired that about him, but I was also taught to admire that in other people.
mhm,
And so it shaped the way that I looked at my mother. Right? It's like, why can't you talk like these people who are, I consider to be intelligent and profound? And so and it made me feel disappointed in her. And then until I realized that uh, the privilege, right, of growing up in not only in America, but also the education that he received, right, that it wasn't it's not like an internal, like an innate um, uh, 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 trait, right? It's all learned. So to see her, to see the other ways that she communicates and the other kinds of intelligences that there are, right? And than just speaking, being able to tell a story, I just appreciate. Um, she astounds me, and also the intimacy that I feel with her is yeah, I think in a lot of ways words can hinder that, right? Like we have a way of communicating with each other that is just ours, and it's something that we developed. And yeah, and as far as Japanese, gosh, I tried so hard to learn Japanese. It kind of fell by the wayside as things got so busy with the book. But I had a pretty good attempt for 2 years, and it's so hard. How do you learn another language? How do people do that? And so it gave me a huge respect for my mother. Like,
Mm.
wow, that she was able to achieve the fluency that she has, and I can't with Japanese. So I think also it's knowing how hard it is, and but my attempt is there, and because I tried, because I'm still trying, I'm not giving up yet, but because I tried, I think that she appreciates that. She knows that at least now I'm considering this as just as important, right? It's just as important that I learn her language as she learned her learning mine.
Hmm. Um, yeah, that reminds me, in the book, you wonder kind of aloud whether yours and your mother's lives would have been different if you had lived in Brooklyn or in San Francisco instead of, in a suburb of Rochester, New York, that is literally demographically 99% white. And
It was at the time. Yeah.
was at the time, yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
And later in the book, when you moved to Oakland, California, as an adult, you say that it's the first time you have experienced the power of visibility, the first place that you have felt seen rather than exposed, as you put it. How did living in Oakland and having that experience change how you understood your hometown that you grew up in?
Um, yeah, I mean, I suppose I had an inkling that that diversity existed. um, but I just thought that this is the way it is, right? Everybody's white. um, I'm an oddity, and it'll always be this way. And I just sort of accepted it. And then when I moved to Oakland, I just didn't know. I didn't know how it could be. I didn't know what I didn't know the strain and tension that I was feeling before. It suddenly dawned on me that, oh, this is how I'm supposed to feel. And it took a while for me to notice it, that it's just how diverse everything was, and nobody stood out because everybody was different.
Mm.
And that just felt wonderful. So and that helped a lot for me to recognize, right, the estrangement and the outcastedness that I felt growing up.
Mm.
Just to have that comparison, right? Because you don't know unless you see um, how it could be, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah.
There is a sense in which this book is an apology to your mother, an attempt to kind of atone for your disregard for her life and her experiences when you were younger. But it's also a record of your own realization about the ways that that isolation, internalized racism and white supremacy and all of these things work together to cause you to devalue your mother as well as yourself.
Mhm.
What was it like to make space for both of those realities as you wrote this book, that you were both guilty of perpetuating this bias as well as a victim of it yourself?
Yeah, it's incredibly, yeah, incredibly difficult. Um, I just, it, I grew up thinking that, I just grew up thinking that race and culture and ethnicity were very incidental. They're superficial, and I think that had everything to do with where I grew up. I think that had a lot to do with my father, and like how he wanted to see the world. That is, it doesn't matter. This kind of uh, uh, like your character, right, will prevail. And so if you don't prevail, then it's a flaw in your character, right? That you weren't able to overcome these obstacles.
Mm.
And so that's that I internalized that with how I viewed myself, how I viewed my mother, right? Like why is the world treating us differently? Like I didn't understand that. Um, and I completely viewed the world as a white person, or as the kind of white supremacy that I was being ingrained in me.
Mm.
Um, so it's yeah, I have to own that, because it's the only way that I'm going to be able to forgive myself and move forward. That's something uh, that I did, right. That's something that I thought,
Mm.
but I think it's important to acknowledge that it's not entirely my fault that I thought that. uh, um, and I think, I was saying, I forget who the quote was by, but like, racism is a smog. We just breathe it in, right? It's just how just we're alive. We're alive. We have to breathe. All of this is going to come in, and just but being aware of it and acknowledging it and knowing that it's not true, right?
Mm.
Knowing that it's not true. So,
Yeah. Um, I think a lot of memoirists who write about their families feel like they don't have a lot left to lose in those relationships by the time that they write their book. Maybe because they're estranged from their families, or maybe their family members are no longer alive. But something really special about your book is how much love for your parents is there alongside the pain and the reckoning with hurts, both distributed and received. Um, how how did you balance writing, difficult truths honestly with maintaining your ongoing loving relationship with your parents?
it's a really good question. Uh, I mean, I think it comes from really trying to understand them as people. They're amazing parents. They are all they ever did was love me. All they ever did was love me and try to and they did the best that they could, right? And so and I made and they've forgiven me for a lot. So it's just it's reciprocal, right? I feel like that's what I owe them, and but I also owe them honesty too. I want because it doesn't do us any good if I sugarcoat over all the pain and the flaws. I think what we really want is to know ourselves, right? And to still be forgiving and good, to accept all our mistakes and still be okay, because we're human, and we're flawed. And something that was really important to me too is with my with like the ending of the book, one of the conversations that I had with my mother, and how she she was asking about the book, and I was kind of like, I don't know, it's about you, it's about me, it's about your marriage. And she cut me off, and she said, you're writing about my hard life, huh? And then like the acknowledgement that her life was hard. She knew that her life was hard. And then afterwards she said, it's okay, I want you to write about my hard life.
Mm.
And because I think that's what we want, right? We want to share it. We want people to see it and say, that was hard.
Mm.
You've been through a lot, and to kind of hold that with you.
Mm.
I know that's one of the reasons that I write, and I love them all the more because of it.
Yeah, what a gift.
Yeah.
To be able to do that for yourself as well as for your family in this book. So you had a punk phase in
Yes.
adolescence you write about. um, who are your biggest punk influences?
Oh gosh. My biggest punk influences. Man, I mean, I it also in the book, I was really, really into Hole, really into Nirvana, and I got really into Green Day too, and No Effects, and I think also that's really how I learned to write. I'm my first love of writing was the lyrics. Yeah, I would just read the CD jackets and read the lyrics and analyze them, and I loved the way, like, the playfulness with the language, and how then the rhythm, and how it matched the music. And I think I do sometimes, I have to catch myself when I'm writing. I'm like I'm like, this sounds like a song lyric. Like, you're not allowed to do that. So but yeah, those when I was growing up, those are the big ones.
That kind of reminds me. So this is your debut book. It's a memoir. Um, what are you working on next? Do you write any other genres, or what do you want to write next?
Hey, I any other genres? I dabble, like, sometimes late at night I'll write a poem if I can't. I'm like, I'm too lazy to, not that poetry, I mean, that's the ultimate. But if it just got to get something short out there, and I really would love to write a screenplay. I love movies, but they're all about me. I don't know how to. I've tried, but I really don't know how to make things up. It's just not the way that my brain works. I have to rely on material that's already there, and work with that. So, but
Mark of a true memoirist is like
yes.
writing a short story and it's just a very thinly veiled version of something that really happened to you.
Hmm. Yeah.
um,
That's me.
yeah, I relate. Well, thank you so much for being here. This was so
Thank
great to talk to you about this book that I
you so
love
much.
so much. If you guys are watching out there today, please be sure to check out this really wonderful book. If you have not already, check out the Memoir March issue of BookPage, either in print or online. Elizabeth has a Q&A in there where she shares more insight about turning her life and history into this really stunning, totally devastating book. um, so Thanks so much again. And
You.
I hope to talk to you and read what you're writing next. Oh yeah, you've got a new essay up on Lit Hub that's related to this book. So y'all check out that too if you want to learn more.
Mhm. Thanks so much.